Welcome to the Country Boy Book Club. Tonight, we are going to discuss Dreamland, the Bob Lazar autobiography. And the reason why we're doing that is because I received a phone call this morning from Mac Daddy. And to paraphrase, the phone call went, "Today's the day." What do you mean today's the day? Today's the day. UFO hearings today. So it's like, all right, cool. Yeah. Well, let's get on Audible. Let's see if there's something that we could do that might be interesting, that would be relevant to everything that's going on today. And well, it turns out that Dreamland's on Audible for free right now, so that was a no-brainer. Yeah. So we downloaded that and both went through that book today. I'll take first swing at it, Mac Daddy. It was a good book. It was a little too good. It was a little too good is my problem. What'd you think?
I enjoyed it. Going into the book, I am a believer. I believe in extraterrestrial life. I don't let it control my life by any means. But I mean, just the thoughts and there's too much factual evidence out there to not believe in it, in my opinion.
Sure.
So, like I don't live in a world where I'm like out there searching for them, but just on a base level, if you want to have a conversation about it, I'll have a conversation with you about it, and I believe in it. But going into that, and then if you look into Bob Lazar and everything that kind of happened, there's just so much factual stuff there, and that's what Dreamland is about. It's a biography about Bob Lazar, and he's one of the ones that kind of came up with all the just released a lot of information at once, or not at once, but released a lot of information that's kind of been, people have been trying to disprove, but they can't disprove it, so you have to take it at face value and go on with your life.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I don't know how much you and I should even go into Lazar himself, right? Because the book is one thing. Dreamland only covers what Lazar wants you to hear, and it is from Lazar himself. It is quite literally his narrative, so he controls that narrative. There's a very famous podcast that was referenced in the book with Joe Rogan. It's a very entertaining podcast, and I think with the prodding of Joe Rogan, it actually is perhaps more informative than even Lazar's book itself. But nonetheless, it's a good book. It's too good. And I made a short on this. I posted a short on this earlier today. My issue with the book is it's entertaining. This is like one of those things that shouldn't be entertaining, right? Like it would have been better if it would have been bland. And then we watch the movie, the Bob Lazar movie that captures the type of feeling that this book gives. It's got some action to it, like small bits of action to it. It's got some drama to it, and the thing that really gets me in the short that I made is like there's too much dialogue that he remembers. And I'll give Lazar this, like, I don't have the type of brain that affords me the intelligence that would, lead to me installing a jet engine in my car. I don't possess the type of intelligence that would lead to me contracting for the U.S. government to work on weapons or contract for the U.S. government in any capacity. I don't possess the type of intelligence that would allow me to even hold a conversation with Joe Rogan for 4 hours or however long that interview was. So, granted, very far different intellects between me and Bob Lazar, but it's like, good Lord, man, there's no way you remember the jokes, the bad jokes you were making in conversation. There's no way you remember, in my opinion, like the context of it's just too much detail. It's too much detail for it to be a 35-year-old story, in my opinion.
So there's also, like what you said, this book was written. I don't exactly remember when he wrote this book, but there's also that level of detail of where this Bob Lazar is a highly intellectual person. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's that aspect of storytelling. I just realized
Yep.
how disgusting my hands are. So, but I'm a farmer. I work in a field and I work on equipment, so sometimes there's going to be dirt
That's
and
right.
grease in these videos. But
That's
there's
right.
that aspect of storytelling, and I have a problem with this. I'm not going to say if Lazar did this or anything whatsoever, but there's stories that I tell about my life that I've told several times, and certain aspects, when you tell it, you don't get a rile out of the people that you're talking to, but you make up a little part about like a to kind of set the scene about a bad joke someone told, or the puns or whatever, um, to make it seem more relatable, to make the characters
Mm-hmm.
seem more relatable in it. So, you don't know if that's what happened or if he actually does remember it, but the fact of the matter is that Bob Lazar wrote a book that's a biography and based on factual occurrences, and you take it at face value. That's with any book, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and so yeah, I it's an excellent book to read, or to just listen to for entertainment value, whether you believe it or not. Um, I, me and you discussed this briefly. Briefly, did you ever think of any UFO, things that you've ever seen personally?
Man, I will start out by saying perhaps I'm not the most observant. I never see copperheads or, you know, cottonmouths. I just don't see them ever when I go out in the woods, which is kind of concerning because I know they're there and I just don't see them. So there's been instances in which I've seen some questionable stuff, but I think it's far more likely to be explained by more common occurrences such as, shooting stars or arrays of radio towers. That is, I say all that to say, like, I'm not going to claim with confidence that I've had any experience. I think I'll go ahead and knock this one out of the park because I know I'm coming off as such a skeptic, and I think I'm going to continue during this episode to seem like such a skeptic. I also, while am skeptical of things, think it's statistically likely that there is intelligent life out there. I think it's even statistically possible that there's intelligent life out there that is far more advanced than us and capable of reaching us. And apologies for interrupting you. I know I'm my internet is struggling, so I'm just gonna keep talking so the edit is easy on my end at least. So sorry, man. But yeah, I think aliens exist. I think that there is factual proof, meaning like I think it's unlikely that our own government would have doctored videos, of unidentified flying objects. Um, I think at this point, yes, with the advent of cell phone cameras, now we have untampered factual proof. But I think Bob Lazar likes explosive things. You know, he likes things that catch a lot of attention. I think Bob Lazar is an incredible storyteller surrounded by other incredible storytellers. I think Bob Lazar is an entrepreneur that saw an incredible opportunity to take some things that he knows to be fact that the government can't refute by any means, that has to do with extraterrestrial activity, and then he has developed this incredible, sometimes perhaps not 100% factual story around some facts that he knows to be true. That is what my gut says about Bob Lazar.
Yeah, I feel like what you were saying. Just to clarify, um, when I say that like parts of storytellings, can't be probably aren't it's factual. It's like the humanization of it. But then, do I actually believe that he was working on this piece of equipment and they were trying to figure out like the fuel of it, and that they threw a golf ball at it and it deflected it, and it's an anti-gravity
Yep.
machine, and that's like the propulsion system and all of that. um I think most of that was true, 100%. um but what I was wanting to do
Yeah.
was to kind of get away from the book, because that's the thing. There's not a whole lot to really talk about with the book, because you read it and it either furthers if you believe it or not, or it's just information and you just run with it like whatever. I've had one or two experiences that I can't explain, and they're
Let's
nothing
hear it.
crazy. It's the same kind of stuff that you hear everyone else who has had a personal experience with a UFO has had, is where you're driving down the road, you're familiar with the road, you know the lights on the road, and you see lights in a circular pattern that are staying perfectly still, and you view it for 5 to 10 minutes, because that was my first one, and I was small, 5 or 6. My sister was in the car with me, my mom was in the car with me, and I remember saying, "Look at those lights,"
Mm-hmm.
and everyone in the vehicle seeing them, and us driving down the road and those lights staying in the same exact position, not in the sky, but to the car, to the vehicle.
Hmm.
When we turned, made a 90-degree turn to get on the road that we lived on, it's those lights stayed there. And it was
Weird.
our family vehicle. It had always been it. It wasn't a reflection of anything that was going on in the car, because my parents were the kind that when you drove at night, you didn't have lights on in the car because they was blinded. Was your
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
mom and dad the same way? Yeah, yeah. So there
Oh
was
yeah.
no lights on or nothing, but it stayed. And then about halfway to the house, it didn't disappear. It went, like in the book said, from 0 to Mach 10 that way, like in a
Hmm.
in a straight line. Um, so I mean, you talk to enough people and you hear those stories. So I've had that experience, um, and then I've had one other one that. So I've also had a lot of paranormal stuff that's kind of happened to me when I was growing up and
Hmm.
into like driving and stuff like that. Um, but I had the experience for the same kind of thing. I was less than 5 minutes from my house, started seeing 3 or 4 sets of lights. I don't exactly remember how many lights there are, because um, I slowed down, and so there was. I know exactly where it was, but there's a tree line that's like 90 degrees to the road, and it comes all the way up to the road, and then it's a field. So
Hmm.
I'm looking at these lights and everything, and as I pass this tree line and I've slowed down, I'm going like 40, 45. as I pass this tree line, the field is completely lit up. It's night, but the field is completely lit up, and there is a smallish figure standing in. It was a cornfield that had just been gathered, so it was just the stalks that was sticking up. But there was a smallish figure just standing in the field, maybe 25, 30 feet from the, not feet, but yards, 25, 30 yards from the road, just staring at me as I pass by. And I won't, I do not feel like it was something paranormal. I honestly feel like it was a, an extraterrestrial, an alien. Just because whenever you experience something paranormal, at least with me, I have a different feeling that comes over me. And I did not get this with this. I was completely taken aback by it. But yeah, so that's kind of the reasons why I believe. And then, do you remember? It was like 2 or 3 years ago, and there's still videos of it up. But multiple people, but like by multiple, I mean like an entire city in Russia. There were some lights that was over Russia. Do you remember those?
Yeah. Yep. I do remember those.
It was just a
for
couple
sure.
of years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But just like evidence of stuff like that happening, and do I think that was like some kind of military thing that Russia was doing? I think I don't want to get into politics on war and stuff like that, but I think what's happened in Russia recently with Ukraine kind of beating them back, and then the coup that was in the middle of it with that other group that they had hired
Yep.
to attack Moscow. I think it kind of shows exactly how weak Russia kind of is at the moment. And I don't think they were kind of working on anything like that or are capable of anything like that. I don't think we're capable of anything like that. But yeah, there's just evidence, and I'm not trying to make a believer out of anybody, but just sharing a story, sharing my thoughts. And then, so how do we want to go to this
Well,
because of what
yeah.
happened today? Do you have anything you want to say?
That I really want to take a look at a couple of things on Reddit because shamefully I have to admit I glanced at Reddit while we were getting this show going. I hadn't looked at it before now, but like the first few things I read, I went, "Oh no!" The first few comments I read, which I assume it's probably sorted as top comments, maybe. Um, they all kind of echoed everything I was thinking. But before we get into that, I want to make sure we clearly talk about the story of Bob Lazar. So I'm gonna take I'm gonna take a first swing at telling the story in just a minute or three, and then you help me fill in the gaps if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, Bob Lazar allegedly got various degrees in I think electronics and physics. He had a couple of degrees. He was a scientist that also dabbled in photo development. You got to remember this story takes place around 89 is roughly when all the action is allegedly really happening in his life. So developing photos was still a big thing. That was like his business that he ran, but his heart and his pedigree was in science. And so somehow he finds himself with this opportunity to interview for this high class job. And it's a very intense interview process. He gets through it at least part of the way, at least far enough to start doing this work, right? And he's flown out to like this secret place in the middle of the desert, which turns out to be Area
S4.
51. Yeah, S4, Area 51, like all those type of places, right? And so he has this partner that he's supposed to be working with, and basically they are to only focus on one aspect of this extraterrestrial craft, and their particular discipline was the propulsion system. And so they had this little energy disk, they had this, reactor, and this emitter. Like it was, those were the basic components of the system, and they were to, figure out how it all worked. And they actually figured out how to replicate the energy source, which I find most interesting because I work in energy, and so with the way that he describes this energy source, it's astounding. To kind of put it in perspective, he makes this claim that this system appears to control gravity. It appears to bend light. It appears to do the type of things that would require far more energy than really what we as humans can really wrap our heads around. Like I energized a 500 kV GSU, 500,000 volt transformer yesterday, and just closing the switch through these massive electrical arcs through the air. So you could hear it from a great distance away, and that like pales in comparison to like it's really hard to fathom. So my point with that is like, how is it like this dude claims that the U.S. government possesses an energy source like this, and we haven't, tapped into that. That is beyond my comprehension. Like that is um, the financial implications of possessing something like that is really hard to understand. But it's like that would be game over. You think old money is something? You possess an energy source that can create gravity. You forget fossil fuels. You know what I mean? As far as an energy source. Anyways, I'm going down a rabbit hole. So this dude is playing this game with the government. The government's being super secretive, and like this is where the Lazar story becomes rather entertaining, perhaps too entertaining. Basically, to continue to try to condense the story as short as possible, the government comes to him and says, "Hey, your wife's cheating on you," and all these other things, right? Like, and so like the basically the point being is the relationship with the government started to deteriorate. He started to work with them less and less, and therefore he started to feel like he needed to perform this self-preservation, as he described it in so many words. And he started telling people about some of the stuff that he'd been seeing, and he started taking them to observe some of these high performance flights, as he called them. And then in an act of like continuing in self-preservation, because the thought process being like, well, if you start talking about this, if you get this public, they can't take you out, because then it'll be too obvious, right? So then he starts doing interviews. First interview is an anonymous interview, followed up by a public interview in which they'd show his face and his name, the whole nine. And the rest is pretty much history. He becomes this pop culture icon associated with Area 51 and just aliens and all of that. So that's the Lazar story. That's like he was the first person to come forward with like information that was going to be hard for the government to just deny. And what's more interesting is like it appears that maybe they tried to discredit him. Like this is where I encourage you to, like outside the book, it seems like his degrees that he had earned were somehow like erased, allegedly. And I think they have some kind of proof of that. He doesn't really go into that in the book, but there's a lot of interesting things about Lazar in which it does appear that the government has messed with Lazar a little bit. But that's the Lazar story. Now, much like Lazar, I want to switch gears on you, unless you've got anything you wanted to add to the Lazar story, Mac Daddy.
So,
Is there anything you want?
the one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was the foreword. It was written by
Okay.
George Knapp, who
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look. I did not do my due diligence on this. But apparently he, according to him in this book, like I said, I have not looked him up any whatsoever. I do not know, but apparently he is a journalist whose sole
Mm-hmm.
purpose was to disprove um Bob Lazar's story, and where he goes and tries to find, evidence that he was working for this agency and stuff like that. They have destroyed all records that he has ever worked there. Um, but then he can get in contact with people that, Bob Lazar has named off people, and people have come forward and said, yeah, I worked with him at this site at S4, basically.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and it's just like one thing after another. Like you, there's plenty of people who have tried to do this, but to me, the easiest way and the best proof for me to find out if something is real or not is not to go looking for evidence that it's real, is to go look for evidence that it's fake. And when certain people, um, this guy obviously did his due diligence, because I think he said 3 years. I think he in the forward he said, yeah, in 3 months or 6 months I'll be done with this. We'll be done. And he's like, yeah, 3 years later I'm still trying to disprove it, and I can't. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all right. So here's the thing. Much like the Lazar thing, I think with everything that's going on with UFOs today, there's got to be some shred of truth. Like, I saw a clip of the whistleblower, and basically somebody was asking, like, what was there any kind of biological aspect found inside of these UFOs that we have in our possession? And the answer was yes. you know, at a congressional hearing. So that's a pretty bold claim. Seems like if they work for us, they've kind of got to say, show me at this point, right?
right.
Um, but here's I'm glad I'm not alone here. I'm gonna share a little bit of Reddit takeaways here. And again, this is from when I loaded this page, which was when we started recording this roughly 30 minutes ago. And I'm just going to read the top 3 comments that were two of the top 3 comments, not top, but the ones that were at the top at that point in time. The very top one was Tourist Tricky. Did anyone have any actual evidence? Haven't we been hearing this for decades but never heard but never any hard evidence? And then 2 more comments down, DAP 12036 says this is all bullshit. So you're telling me that the US is the only country in the entire world that's witnessed these UAPs? Yeah, no. I bet there are Russian or Chinese plants just putting there to put in doubt or fear. This is pure BS. Fair enough, bro. Like, I really just am a bit skeptical on it just seems a little too weird. This is too hard of a swing, so what's going on? Or is it that um are the aliens about to show up? Is that what's about to happen? Because was our government's hands forced, and now they're like, okay, well, now we got to get it all out in the open because they're about to be here in like a couple more weeks. Or is our government doing something sketchy and they're just trying to distract us with this, which I think is far more likely, given that while you cited Ukraine pushing Russia back, I am hearing news reports in which that's not the case, and that it is very much becoming this failing war. And perhaps this is even, part of distracting the U.S. people from, how, number one, how intertwined we are in that conflict. I think it's far more likely that that's the case. That we're being shown right before election commercials really start to roll. We're going to start to be distracted by this very shiny object over on the far side of the stage. That's where my brain's on it. But what do you think?
Besides the fact that I do think UFOs are real, and
yep,
I'll just go ahead and say it. I feel like the American government would hide something like that just for the occasion to spring it upon us in a time to distract us from real issues that are happening. That's one of the main things is one of the guys that I saw on TikTok was talking about what do we do now? They're real. What do we do now? Well, you don't do anything. You continue on with your daily life.
What are you gonna do? Yeah, that's right.
Because it doesn't actually impact your life any at all. If I can't, I don't know how it's going to impact me. It's not until aliens show up at your doorstep and it's like, hey, come with us. It's not going to impact you in any way whatsoever. But yes, do I think that the American government would do something to? I mean, they already did. Sorry, I have baby chickens and one of them's jumped. He perches up on the edge of the container. Yeah, and it scared the life out of me. I didn't know what was going on.
That's funny.
But yeah, to distract us from the real issues. I mean, they've done that. It's known that they've been doing that.
Yep.
But it still doesn't change the fact that I'm excited about it. I can't. So that's why I have to work tomorrow. But definitely on my break, I'm going to be trying to watch as much as that. Because I didn't get to listen to any of it today. But there's been.
I do. We can dig into some key takeaways here in a minute. Go ahead. There's been some what?
Yeah, I was going to say there's been Air Force and Navy who fly planes who have come forward, after service and everything, and said, yeah, there are crafts out there in certain specific areas and stuff like that we knew were there, but they don't move like anything on Earth. And so it was just nice to see, from the bits and pieces that I've been able to watch today, it's nice to see that they're actually, in the American justice system talking about it.
Yep.
Finally, in public.
Yep. Yeah, I really, especially when you talk about like some of the more infamous pilot videos, like those, the most popular ones have been over the ocean, at least as far as what I've seen, which seems like a far more plausible place for them to hide. Number one, given how little we know about our own oceans, but even more of a fun thought that I've always had since I was a kid about aliens. You look at bugs and then you look at fish, man, and then you go really deep and look at some of those fish. Like, who's to say these bugs and all these fish aren't aliens anyway? Like, it's not that big of a jump of the imagination, because some of them suckers look weird. And then one other thought on that I've always kind of had is just how pretentious of us as a species to think that an alien would even look remotely like us, or function even remotely like us, or even like process things in any way, shape, or form like us. And even in Lazar's book in Dreamland, like they go into to describe aliens a little bit, like some imagery that they were able to see, and it's like, no, the biology is a lot different. Than it's almost really hard to understand, and rightfully so. Like, these creatures could breathe copper,
Yeah.
on some planet somewhere. Like, what is a skeleton? What is a skin? Type things, like it could be a gas that has a consciousness. You don't know, bro. Like, it's incredibly pretentious to think it's going to be 2 legs and 2 eyes and 2 arms.
Yeah, I'm
Who knows, man?
that's where I'm at yeah, with how to stop trying to Hollywood it and
Mm-hmm.
get it out of your mind of what you think they look like, because we have no idea.
Yep.
Um,
Right.
one of the other things that um, I'm always reminded of this anytime that I kind of start talking about aliens and things like that. Um, the one thing that someone has said to me, and he was like me. He had an experience where he was driving and saw what he could only explain as a UFO and this, that, and the other, um, and he was a Christian man, and he
Hmm.
said, I've seen all of that, but I don't believe it. And I said, well, why
Hmm.
not? And he said, well, and this is just me just offering someone else's perspective on it. And he said, well, the way that I look at it is I honestly believe that God loves us so much that he's not focused on anything else out there, is that he's
Hmm.
only focused on us. And where I could see that at the same time,
Mm-mm.
God has no limits.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's.
Um, not trying to like discredit him or anything like that, but that was just my my take on that is
Yeah, no, yeah, and I
yeah,
respect that point of view.
yeah,
I just think it's an incredibly influenced point of view. Um,
right.
you know, I respect that person. That sounds like that person has this remarkable commitment to their spirituality, which is great. It might be a little too
Yeah,
much,
that's a great way to put that. Yeah, yeah.
but except for that last part, maybe. Oh man. So, do you want to take a look at some of these key takeaways from Reddit? Can we take a look at
Yeah, we can do
a
that.
post that I found on Reddit? Cool. Share screen. Key takeaways. Share. IRAD abuse. So that's the top one. I have seen that one. So basically, um, one of the more important things from the takeaway that I've seen so far is it talks about the financial abuse. The lying, if you will, of how public funds are being allocated. And fair enough, if we really do have UFOs entering our atmosphere and doing questionable things, perhaps maybe we don't want to be alarmist, straight out of the gate. I can understand that. But we're past that now. It's out there in the open. How do you say this dude's name? Grush?
Is yeah, Grush.
Grush? Grush?
Yeah, however,
Spent
yeah,
11 hours with both committees. U.S. government and contractors have craft and non human biologics. There you go. Now, the one thing that I want to just point out on that though is even in this note, it doesn't clarify, is it just the whistleblower that is making this claim, or are there other people corroborating that story? You know what I mean? Like, because if it's
Yeah,
just the whistleblower, which is the only clip that I saw saying anything about biologics, was the actual whistleblower. If it's just him saying that, that's not sufficient for me. They need to get somebody else to come forward and say that before I fully buy in that that's actually true.
right.
Let's see what U.S. government contractors have intimidated, hurt, and potentially murdered would-be whistleblowers. Well, that falls right in line with the Lazar story to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to Dreamland, Lazar claims that there were substantial intimidation tactics in which, like, the government allegedly told him that the Russians were trying to get him. The government was, putting him under constant surveillance, allegedly, both wiretapping his phone and staging people outside of his house consistently,
Which he agreed to all
and
of that.
tailing him and his friends. He did, but it was far beyond the point in which the background check that he agreed to allow this happen, enlarged
Yes.
due to the
Yes.
background check that he needed. But they were way past that. The stuff, like,
Yeah.
clearly turned into intimidation tactics. His car was broken into several times. I think they were breaking into his house. They were, like, rearranging the furniture, moving stuff around in his house. So,
Yeah. So it was broken into, but nothing was stolen. It just things were
Mhm.
moved so he would know people
Mhm.
were there. It's purely intimidation tactics.
Yep. So this falls right in line with the Lazar story. Let's see. Individuals in charge of classification, access to information are both senior executive officials in both military and DoD and defense contractors, unelected officials. Satellite imagery of crashes, tests, and retrieval sites exist. Are we going to see that though?
No, we're not going to see anything.
U.S. government
This
and
is
well, I want to. This is what.
how did you?
Let's see where
Yeah.
U.S. government and contractors could have advanced technology that has been made from reverse engineering efforts. How about that? We timed that Lazar book right, didn't we, bud?
Yes. Yes. Yes, we did. How appropriate that it was free. Because we were like, we want to get on this one. It's perfect, yeah.
Whistleblower, because I'm not sure if I'm saying the dude's name right or not, so I'm just going to start calling him Whistleblower. And his wife were intimidated in a disturbing way. They know people who have been or who have seen non-human biologics. He's seen photos and documents, saw footage of a orb, UFO, UAP is what they're calling them now. Saw footage of a shoot down and said the craft was otherworldly. Well, that's a bold move on our part.
Yeah.
Can you see Discord coming up right now?
I don't see Discord. No.
Cool. Yeah, well, it's coming up, so I'm gonna have to work around that. So the whistleblower saw footage of a shoot down. It's potential for this also to be interdimensional. Mention of holographic principle. Hold on, bud. Have we been watching too much Stranger Things? Have we ever? Has our government really, like, started to
Well, hold on,
get too
because
Hollywood on this?
you
Interdimensional.
think
my guy.
about I know, but one of the things that Lazar was kind of pointing about out at the for the energy source was transfer of energy through the air. He was kind of talking about
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, whereas that I mean, it's light, but we would be able to see that. But entering, I don't know. I'm really gonna watch this tomorrow. Whenever to find out what else was said about that, but it, I think it would be possible. But I don't know. Because you also have to remember too that there's a lot of theories and stuff where there is a parallel world that is living directly beside of us, but because they're on a different like wavelength pattern, we can't interact with them. There's a lot of stuff that could be talked about and speculated. So
I'm reading ahead in some of these notes. So basically, this whistleblower is not going to provide any more information in a public setting. It looks like a lot of the information is going to be in private sit downs with congressional members, other panel members directly after the hearing. Statements made by Dr. Kirkpatrick of Aro that there is no evidence of extraterrestrial visitation or objects defying known science are inaccurate. He's making that claim under oath. So, when asked about communication with NHI, stated that Boeing allegedly engaged an incident involving red cube the size of a football field. What? Wow.
that's hold on. So I had mentioned it earlier, and I really don't think it was over Russia, but the huge red or orange sighting that was. Now that I think about it, I don't think it was over Russia, but it was an entire city that was taking videos and posting it online. You could just at that point in time, you could just it was everywhere. I wonder if
There was a
that's
big
that.
sighting over Michigan.
No,
Oh
this was
no, the what I
overseas. I'm trying to Google it, but just keep going. If I find it, I'll let you know.
oh I mean that's it on the main key points. I'm scrolling through
Oh,
some of
okay.
the comments now. Uh, Graves' account of the 100-yard craft. Hmm. Interesting stuff. All right, that's enough of that. Yeah, I think this is going to. I think this is our new 9/11 COVID. I probably shouldn't have said those words together. Now our video is never going to get any play.
It'll be alright. You can just
Yep.
beep it and don't beep it, but like quack it.
Yep.
That's a
I
trick.
yeah. I do think that this is going to be the next distraction. I hate to say it. I think that we've kind of been in this cycle of major military blunder or major defense industry happenings, followed by uh, societal shifting event. There's a pattern there that's pretty hard to deny. So I think, yeah, I think that UFOs are real. I think the aliens are real. I think they're here. And I think that now they're going to amplify all that to distract us from all the other bullshit that's happening in the world. That's what I think. I almost don't care now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like now that you're confirming that you have been lying and covering this stuff up when people have so clearly and blatantly been calling you out on it for decades. Now it's like I care even less. Now it's like, okay, great. Okay, great. Maybe the society should collapse.
Yeah. It's
You
just
know?
another one of those things. It's just another one of those things to, 'cause you either believe or you don't believe. Nothing is going to change in your day to day life. It's just another one of those things to just. I honestly do. I feel like it's just another one of those things to distract us from Ukraine and Russia. What's going on over there? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's another thing
Yep.
to distract us from. Actually, I'm not gonna say her name right, but Ghislaine Maxwell and um that whole thing
Oh
with what's
yeah,
his name?
yeah.
What's the guy's name? With the I don't want to say what
Yeah,
he
the
was doing, but you
island.
know what I'm talking about. Yeah, the
The
island.
island.
He didn't
It's
kill himself.
Maxwell and
That guy.
oh my god, Epstein.
Why
Epstein.
Epstein? Yeah. It's just another thing to distract us from
Stuff like that.
things that we
Absolutely.
should be um curious about. And that's
Yep.
really, that's the bottom line.
See, something else too is like the more and more I think about what's been happening lately, the more and more I think about whether or not America's actually under attack. You know, the Americas even, because like you think about like how like systematic those fires went up in Canada and the effect that it's had on North America. You think about all like these catastrophic events that we've had recently in infrastructure. Like it's not a far cry to say that we are in fact under attack, and perhaps instead of giving Russia that leverage, which is intimidating the American people, they'd rather just distract us with something that they've just been sitting on for a while. You know?
Yeah.
I figure if we're talking aliens, I might
Yeah,
as well
that's
just
definitely a
throw
possibility.
conspiracies out left and right. You know, I might as well just see if I can get one to stick. You
Yeah.
know?
I'm perfectly fine with conspiracy theories, as long as you don't like let it control your life. And even if you do, that's if you have enough proof for that, then go for it. But whenever um any major discovery period has always been met with a lot of scrutiny. So it just
Yep.
it is what it is, or it isn't what it ain't. Um, kind of deal.
It ain't what it ain't.
But I feel like we're
It
just kind
ain't
of
what it
talking
ain't.
around in circles now. So
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to kind of drive this home though, one more time. Because like aliens have always been this big conspiracy theory, right? Like put on your aluminum foil hats, don't talk to your third cousin Jimmy cuz he believes in aliens. And to an extent I've kind of been, I've kind of been guilty of, oh my god, could you just shut up? Like, do you really think aliens care about us? Do they really give a crap what these people are doing on this little rock? But conversely, when those people on that little rock start blasting off hydrogen bombs, perhaps it would warrant a little bit of attention. So, my
yeah,
point being is like we've always been told like Area 51 doesn't exist. Bob Lazar is saying it does. A lot of things Bob Lazar is saying is becoming more and more true every day. It does call into question, okay, well, what are the other things that we've been told systematically aren't true? That there seems to be a lot of evidence to show that they could be true. My point being is like your crazy cousin Jimmy might be more in touch with reading situations and people than most of the rest of the people. Like, oh, this is not good, my guy. This is not good that we are now owning up to just how much has been covered up. and we're owning up to it like it's nothing, like it's not a big deal that we've been told this entire time that Area 51 doesn't exist and aliens don't exist. But oh, by the way, yeah, they do. So, anyways, about Russia. You know how weird that is. I mean, really, like you take a step back, like we're having a hearing on this, and sure, Reddit's freaking out, but like in the grand scheme of things, bro, I haven't heard about this once at work. You know what I mean? Like we're so nonchalant about not whether or not aliens exist. Again, statistically speaking, of course they freaking exist, but we're not freaking out about how we've been lied to this entire time, and now we're being told that we've been lied to the entire time, and everybody's just acting like it's okay. What? Cool. All right, cool. I'll see you on. I'm not going to see you because I'm going to be on my sailboat. Don't bother me on my sailboat, bro. I cannot wait. This is ridiculous, man. This is like the more I think about it, the more ridiculous this gets. What is going on?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, at
Read the
some
Lazar
point
book.
of me as read it, and really take into read the Lazar book. I'm gonna do my due diligence tomorrow and actually listen to what happened today to find out what it's about, and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of parallels. And the other thing, I forgot what I was gonna say.
It's late. It's late.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so this is and by today y'all won't be watching it on the same time today. Today is it's July 26th. So the hearing was today.
Yep. Yep. It's going to be interesting to see how this develops. I'm sure Mac Daddy will be reporting back either here on the Country Boy Book Club or over on Country Boy RN. So y'all make sure to follow us on various platforms. It's not our thing. I'm interested enough in aliens. I'm interested in anything nonfiction. And so I'm happy to talk about it here. We'll probably talk about aliens a little bit more. We should probably follow up on Bob Lazar because really, like, now, especially now, there would be a good reason to, look at everything that's happened since this book came out. So maybe we can follow up on that in the near term, but I think this is a good stopping point for now. The book was good. Like I said, the book was almost too good. It was very entertaining. And in addition to the entertainment, it's turning out that, well, perhaps it's looking more and more true, which is more and more astounding the more I think about it. It's a good book, man. I appreciate you suggesting this one.
Yeah, the more I don't want to keep going because we're beating a dead horse, but the more I sit here and the more I think about it, I just keep thinking about all the other conspiracies dealing. I mean, we can go on and on and on. There's the whole MK Ultra thing. There's what actually happened in Texas with what's his name? The guy that was making the cult, but it wasn't really a cult.
Oh,
it
yeah.
was a cult. What's his name? Because no one's gonna know what I'm talking about unless it's
Branch
his name.
Davidian. Is that what you're
yes,
talking about?
that was it. But what was the guy's name? But yeah, that before that, there was the guy, the Green Beret, who was living in the mountains. I can't remember his name. If y'all know the stories, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, there's just so much stuff that they'll hide and cheat and lie to us about. But then again, at the same time, one other thing is George Carlin has a skit, and he talks about, think of the average American and think about how stupid and uneducated that American is, and realize that is the average. Half of them are stupider than that. So is it one of those things that should we be told everything? I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
never be told everything, but
Sure. And you know, in the grand scheme of things, they are by the people, for the people. They should. But also, yeah, there are a lot of dumb people out there. A lot of dumb people out there. And more importantly, like, okay, well, until you really know what's going on, because we're such an aggressive species, you probably don't want to just go announcing that somebody's poking around, because it would create some mass hysteria. I can totally understand. And maybe it's all coincidental. Maybe they're like, okay, well, this society has been through so many things over the past 20 years. Now is the time when should we talk about it.
Yeah, I got a nosebleed, so I'm gonna let you finish the episode.
All right. Well, hopefully Mac Daddy doesn't bleed out. We're going to go ahead and cut it here since we've got some biological technical difficulties, but we will follow back up on a lot of the content here, and we will see you on the next one. Please don't die, Mac Daddy.